Welcome back, my fellow Python programmers, to a brand new video, and in this one we're going to be looking at lists in Python. We're going to understand what lists are, we're going to learn how we can access elements inside of these lists, how to manipulate these elements, and learn how we can organize lists. And then at the end we're going to have a big challenge where we solve a series of problems and we practice everything that we've learned so far. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. If at any point you feel that you're enjoying the contents of this video, please make sure to leave me a like, and let's get started. A list is a collection of items in a particular order, and you'll see why we say particular order. They are delimited with square brackets, so whenever you see any variable in Python equal to and then you have square brackets open up on each side, it means that we are instantiating or initializing a list. And inside we have elements. Sometimes they are referred to as items. I like to call them items. You can see that we have commas separating these items. And you can see that we can have a list of integers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can have a list of strings. You can see right here we can use double quotations or single quotations to delimit strings, doesn't matter. If you're still not sure how we work with integers and strings, there's a video, I will link it somewhere right here at the top, that you can go to and watch and understand everything about variables and various data types. And finally we have a mixed list in here where we have integers, strings, floats, and booleans as well, so we can create a mixed list as well. But usually it's better to have just a simple list that has the same elements inside of it. Anyway, let's go ahead and print out these lists. So I'm going to print out this list, and this list. So this one is going to be the strings list, mixed list. Right click, run, and I'm going to dock this right about here. So as you can see, we have this list or these lists normally printed out. But obviously this is not a good or nice way to print out a list. Let's go ahead and try and access the items enclosed inside of these square brackets. In here I'm going to print and then print out string list, and then I'm going to access an element. I'm going to access element 0. Now, what is the output in here? Or try to think of what the output might be. Boom, there we go. You can see that it's Frodo, it's the first element. Remember when I told you that this is a list is a collection of items in a particular order? That's because the order always starts at 0. So each element in here has an index associated with it. Each item. So Frodo is at 0, Samwise is at 1, Gandalf 2, Aragorn 3. Same thing holds true for the numbers list. Even though I started with 1 in here, it's actually at index 0, then index 1, index 2, and so on and so forth. So for example, if I told you I wanted to access 3.14, what would I use in here? What would I write? Boom, you can see that to access 3.14 I have to access the element number 2 or element at index number 2 inside of the mixed list. First of all, we use the mixed list because it's right here, and 3.14 we have 0, 1, 2, boom, on 2. You can also use negative indexes, for example, to access Gandalf going backwards. So as you can see right here, I used, instead of a positive number, I used a negative number and I was able to access Gandalf. How did that happen? Well, when we're working in negative numbers, we start at -1 right here and then we go to -2 on Gandalf, -3, -4 with Frodo. I recommend that you test this out on your own. Next thing is, and this is very important, we want to avoid indexing errors such as using an out of index range. So for example, if I try to access the numbers list at position number 5, it's very natural to think that the number 5 right here should be accessed at position number 5. So as you can see right here, the numbers list at position number 5 is out of range. Why? Because remember, we start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 is the last index inside of this list. When we try to access number 5, it's a index error, list index out of range. So to access number 4, or to access number 5, we use index number 4. And finally, we can use these values, or we can use the values that we get from these indexes as any other variable. And as you can see, what I did right here is I used the f strings. Again, if you're not familiar with f strings, watch the previous video. There is only, then I accessed the number, or using the index number 0 at the numbers list, which is 1 right here. And then f string 2 at position 2 dot upper. So I added the dot upper to this because I know it's going to be a string from the strings list, which was at position number 2 we have Gandalf 0, 1, 2, and then I took it to the upper in the room, and this is the output that I get. So we can use the values that we access from these lists as any normal variable. Now let's go ahead and look at how we can manipulate the items inside of these lists. Alright, so right here we have a list of car brands. We have Toyota, Ford, Honda, Chevrolet, Tesla, and BMW. I printed out this original list because I want to see where the original list is and then make modifications to it. And finally, we have this list printed out right here. Nothing too special, just a list of car brands that are strings. We can modify the elements in a list. For example, I changed right here Ford into Audi. How did I do that? Similar to how I was accessing elements to simply print them out. Now I access the element at a certain index, which is 1 in here because Ford is, remember, at position number 1 because we always start at 0, and it's now equal to Audi. So when I try to print out car brands, you can see right here, instead of Ford, now I have an Audi. Now, something you might have noticed in here is that right now the car brands is a very long list, and we can have a very long list. And I have to move this out of the way to show you, to show it to you properly. What we can do is we can actually print this out vertically. Instead of horizontally. So now I can easily show you everything that I have in here, and when I right click and I run, you can see that the output does not change at all. We can also add items to our list. So as you can see, what I did in here is I used the .append. This is a built-in function or method, some call it method, that can be used to add an element, but notice that it's added at the end of our list. Most of the time you are going to be using the append, but what if you wanted to add Mercedes-Benz somewhere in here, maybe in between the Audi and the Honda? For that you would use something called the insert method. So what I did right here is I commented out the line where I was appending Mercedes-Benz at the end, and now I use the insert at index number 2. So now I should have 0, 1, and then have Mercedes-Benz instead of Honda and push Honda to the right. Let's just right click and run, and boom, as you can see, that is exactly what happened. Instead of appending Mercedes-Benz to the end, I actually inserted it somewhere in the middle. And we can also remove items from a list using the delete statement, or some people refer to it as the del. So right here you can see that I use the del statements on the car brands at position number 3. Now I want you to take a few seconds and think of which item or which car in here is going to be removed. Boom. And as you can see right here, car number 0, 1, 2, 3. So Honda should be removed, and as you can see, Honda was indeed removed. So now we've looked at what lists are, we've seen how we can manipulate lists. Now it's time to look at organizing our lists, which is also a very important part of working with lists. Alright, so as you can see right here, we just have a normal original list that starts with 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 9, 2. Nothing too special, square brackets, everything looks good. Now I'm going to reverse this list using the .reverse method. So as you can see, I use the dot reverse, so right click and run, and as you can see, I get none. Why is that? Well, something very important that you always have to think about is what do these methods that I'm using on any element in Python actually do. Hover over this and you can see that we kind of don't get anything in here, right? There's no real documentation. You can always click on the link and go to the website, make sure that you understand everything on python.org, but nobody has time for that. We simply want to look at this right here. You can see that def reverse, and this is a function, something that we will learn in subsequent videos. Maybe there's a video already, check it out. And you can see that it actually returns none, and this is why we get none as an output, because it doesn't really return anything. So instead, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to hit Ctrl X to cut it from here, print it out right here. So I am still applying the reverse, but now I'm simply printing out the numbers list. And boom, as you can see, this list was actually reversed. And remember, this is permanent. Once you apply the reverse, it's always there on the numbers list. So you can see right here, instead of starting with 314, now it ends with 314 and going backwards. Let's go ahead and look at the two main ways that I can sort a list. So as you can see right here, I use the dot sort method on my numbers list. And again, why did I use it separately, not inside of the print? If I hover over it, what does it return? You can see right here, arrow, none. So it returns nothing. And even right here, you can see that I have a very nice description of what this is. And later on, we will learn how we can actually do all of those things, or you can go to the video where I've already done this. So right click, run, boom, sorted list right here. You can see that we start from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, everything looks neat, everything looks right. But there is a different method that allows us to sort this not permanently like we've done right here, because look, now per numbers list is forever sorted. Maybe I just want to sort it to display it right now. We're going to look at a different method. Alright, so what I did in here is I created a new list of names, Charlie, Alice, Eve, and Bob, and then I printed out the original list, just so we can have a proper look at it. Then I sorted out the list using the sorted method right here, or this is actually, if I hover over it, you can see that it's also built in. You don't need to understand everything that's going on in here, don't worry about that, but this is also another method that you can go and read all about. I think it's called function, not the method, but anyways, you can see that it will sort out the names list, and then I printed out the name list again after it has been sorted, so we can see what are the effects of the sorted method. So when I right click and I run, boom, you can see that the original list, Charlie, Alice, Eve, the sorted list starts with Alice, Bob, Charlie, and Eve, A, B, C, and E. And then finally, when we print out the original list again, you can see that again it stays Charlie, Alice, Eve. So unlike the dot sort that permanently changes the order of our list, the sorted method simply does it on the spot. And if we hover over it, I think we can probably read it in here somewhere. I do recommend that you always read the description of every single method and function that you use. Alright, so we've learned everything that there is to know about lists, almost. Of course, lists go much deeper than this, but this is an incredible introduction into lists. Now it's time for a bit of a challenge. And your challenge is going to be friends party invitation. You're organizing a party for all your friends. You need to do some organizing to make sure everyone has seats. First, you'll need to create a list of names of the 5 people you'd like to come. They can be made up friends, they can be real friends, just a list of 5 peoples. It should be strings. Print out a personalized invitation for 3 of them. So you'll need to access 3 of these people from your list and then print out some kind of sentence where you invite them. One of your guests can't make it. Modify your list and replace that guest. You found a bigger table for 3 more people. Add 1 at the end of the list, 1 in the middle, and 1 in the beginning of the list. And a bonus in here, you need to print out the length of your list. We haven't seen this yet, so this is something that you'll have to go and research. Turns out you'll only have space for 6 people. You need to remove one random person and one specific person by their name. This is also something that you'll need to research, and I kind of gave you a hint in here. If you're smart, you're going to find it. And finally, time to organize the party. Print out a sorted list of your friends. Now actually sort out the original list. Now reverse that list. So, pause the video right now and go do the challenge. Okay, so this is the list of names of the people or my friends that I'm inviting. First of all, I sent a message to guest number 0. Who might that be? Try to think of it. Of course, it's Frodo because we start at 0. Hope you have the ring with you. Then we accessed guest at index number 3, which means 0, 1, 2, 3. We should have Legolas. Don't forget to leave your bow at the door. Something you might have noticed is that I have a backslash here behind these single quotation marks. That's because if I remove it, you can see that I get an error, and this is something that we've covered in the previous video. In here, I need to add a backslash because what happens is I started with a single quotation marks and then I got to a second quotation mark. So Python understood, all right, this is it. They've written their string, it's done. But no, I add this backslash. This is now called a special character. So I can use this, or I could have simply used double quotation marks around this, but this is just a faster way. And finally, we accessed guest number 2, magic business, right click and run. Hi Frodo, hope you have the ring with you. Legolas, don't forget to leave your bow at the door, and Gandalf, no funny magic business. Understood? Okay, so something that I did not talk about when I had a very long print and it was not showing up, what I did is I simply hit enter, and you can see that a new line it was created and nothing really changed. You can do this whenever you want. The reason why an F appeared in here is because I had a variable that I wanted printed out. So on the challenge, I did the same. Because this was a very long line, I split it into 2 by simply hitting enter, and you can see that the IDE does everything for me. Your IDE might be different if you're not using PyCharm, so keep that in mind. I appended Bilbo because I wanted him to be at the end. I inserted Saruman at position number 3. I thought that's probably the middle. And finally, Galadriel is in the beginning. I inserted it at 0. Right click and run, and I forgot to print out the guests. Excellent work, Michael. So print out guests. Boom. And there we go. Galadriel in the middle, Bilbo at the end, and Saruman somewhere in the middle. Even though once we've added Galadriel, he's no longer in the middle. Later on, I'm going to show you how we can get the exact middle, but before that, we need to solve step number 5. Okay, so step number 5, the length now is, and notice that I did not use the replacement field like I've been doing before. I added a comma and then printed out the length. So 2 new things, the len method, if you hover over it, you can see that it returns the number of items in a container. Now, container in here refers to anything that might have a size, like a list. And then the comma right here. So in here, something that we'll talk about more later on, I provided 2 variables to my print function, and both of them, or it's not variables actually, in here it's called parameters or arguments. So I provided 2 of them to the print, and they should look like this. So the length of my list is now 8. And remember, we don't start counting at 0, we actually count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So now what we can do is we can actually use this length to access the exact middle of our Saruman, or to access the exact middle and then add Saruman to it. So I'm going to comment out this line, and instead of trying an arbitrary number like 3, I'm going to get the length of my guests list, and then I'm going to divide it by 2. But the problem with this, and you can see that I already have a highlight, this might be a float. And you cannot use a float to get indexes, they have to be integers. So what did we learn in the previous video? How would we solve this issue? Another forward slash. What this does is it divides a number and then it removes any floating point. So now when I run, you'll see that Saruman is more in the middle. Now of course, because we have a even number of elements, that means he cannot be in the exact middle, but he is pretty close. So this is a better way of finding the middle using the length of the guests. Okay, so this is the code that I've written. First of all, I said that I'm removing Aragorn, and then I went and researched, well, actually you had to go and research a function or method that allows you to remove a specific item from your list. And in here I removed Aragorn. So now, or before I do that, let me just comment this out. Right click and run, and as you can see now Aragorn is nowhere to be found. But you have to be very careful with this. If you've noticed, when I sped up this video, I actually copied it. Why? Because if I try to use Aragorn with a little a, right click and run, I get an error. Why? Because I was trying to remove X, which in this case is Aragorn, X, I got a value error. Why? Because X is not in the list. Because whenever you're using string references, you have to be very careful. It has to be the exact same thing. That's why it's not a very good idea to use Aragorn directly in here. Then I removed a random person, just an arbitrary person at position number 5. So who was booted in here? After removing Aragorn, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Legolas was removed. Now the problem with this is that 5 is not an actual random person. If you wanted to really have a random person, you'd have to import random. So I can import random in here, and then I can use, instead of just a 5, I can use random.randint, and then say that I want a random integer between 0 and the length of my guests. Now if you're a complete beginner, this might seem very scary, but basically what we did in here is we wanted to use the randint. If I hover over it, it says returns a random integer in the range of a and b, 0 being a, the length of the guest being b, to what end, and both ends are included. So from 0 it could be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Why just 7? Because Aragorn is gone, so we have one less person. Right click, run, and you can see now who was removed. Not Legolas, it was Gandalf. If I right click and I run again, you can see who was removed. Gandalf again, hopefully, third time. Gandalf stays here, and who was removed? Bilbo was removed. So, but advanced, don't worry, I just wanted to show you how we can actually get random integers. Alright, so in here I got the sorted guest, sorted them out, and printed everything out, and I also printed out the original list so that we can see that the original list does not change, as you can see right here. So Galadriel stays in the beginning, while when we sorted it, you can see that Bilbo was the first one, Saruman was the last. And finally in here I sorted out the list, I printed out the original list because I wanted to show you that now it is permanently, not damaged, I want to say damaged, but it's permanently sorted. And finally we reversed our sorted list, so now we start with Saruman, Legolas until we get to Bilbo. So as a quick overview of the things that we've learned, first of all we learned that we can provide our print with multiple arguments. This is something new. We learned how we can reverse. Or actually, let's start from the beginning. First of all, we learned what the heck is even a list. We learned that we can have an integer list, we learned that we can have a string list, and we learned that we can have a mixed list. We can also have lists inside of lists. We can print out these lists, We can access individual items or values of these items inside of a list using square brackets and then their index. Remember, we always start at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. We can use negative indexing, even though you'll rarely use this, but I wanted to show you just in case. And we can use these items that we extract from a list just as any variable that we've seen before. We looked at how we can manipulate lists. We can print them out horizontally, we can print them out vertically, nothing changes. We can modify a specific item using its index in between square brackets, just like we've accessed it before. We can append an item to a list by using the .append method. What does the append do? It adds it to the end. The insert, we can actually select where we want to add this item, and then, or we specify the index at which we want to add a specific item, and then we add it. And then finally, we looked at how we can remove or actually delete a specific item from a list. We looked at organizing lists. We've seen that we can reverse a list, we can permanently sort a list, and we can temporarily sort a list. We can permanently sort it using the .sort and temporarily sort it using the sorted method. And finally, this was the challenge. So, fellow Python programmers, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have, please make sure to leave me a like, and if you like the contents of this channel, I have a lot more coming, so subscribe as well. I know this was a very long video. I think I'm about 40 minutes, maybe it will be condensed, but there was a lot to unpack here, and I hope you went through all of it. In the next video, we're going to be looking at loops, so you have to click here somewhere, like right here. Yeah, let me move the mic so you can see everything. Up, there we go. Nice space. Right here. Loops in Python. Continue your learning journey. Let's go.